Hey guys, how you doing? It's the Intuitive Investor. So it's about 6 o'clock Central Time here. Today's October 24th, and we're literally about 12 to 13 hours away from Shopify's third quarter earnings report. And I'm very excited. I'm kind of nervous at the same time, only because of the general climate of the market as a whole. I've been really following a lot of different industries, and I've been going online, checking out the NASDAQ, their earnings reports, kind of seeing who's meeting, who's beating, who's missing expectations, and just the general climate of the weather, just the general climate of the market conditions seems to be a little somber. I was actually in the process of watching Kramer's show this evening just for more context and more information, and it looks like the Dow just got wiped out with over 600 points going down, and so really it's bad timing, I think, for Shopify. As some of you guys know, I have been a Shopify aficionado since IPO, and here's one of my original stock twits messages that I had posted. And I remember this day because I remember that I had decided to go against the guidance of my financial advisor at the time, and I said, you know what, just buy it. I'd seen that Shopify in Canada was already having success, so for me it made it easy to trust in a company that was already having success there to be available here, and so I did, and the rest has been history since 2015. So I wanted to just bring up a one-year chart, not a one-year chart, but the year-to-date. As you could see, I want you guys to see something here. You see that back in January, it looked like it had started off right in the 100 range. We were just about 2 months recovering from some fictitious allegations that we were a multi-level marketing scheme, if you guys remember, and we recovered. But when we look at what's happened over the course of the past several months, we look to see that it's had some really great strides, where from January all the way until about March, the middle of March, towards the end of March, we've seen a great bullish run, and that's the Shopify that I remember. 2018 has been a very difficult year for Shopify because then soon after that, about 2 weeks later, then it was at its lowest point thus far, hitting about as low as $117. So it went down considerably. And then it experienced yet another bullish run that ran from April 6th to about June 20th. So literally a 2-month bullish run. I remember back in the days where we'd experienced these nonstop bullish runs that were like freight trains. And I almost felt guilty. Yeah, in a bizarre way, I almost felt guilty about how long these bullish runs were going for. So in that moment, it had tested the 170 range, and it got rejected, and it ended up coming back down to the 140s, the mid 140s. And if you continue looking at this, you'll see that right around June 28th, which is when it dropped to the 146 range, then it kicked back up about a month later, and it was back at 173, again retesting the 170s. And eventually it got kicked back down, and it dropped as low that time around to about the 133 range, which was a significant drop. And then eventually it went on another little bullish run where it topped off this time in the 165 range, 167, and that was right around September 20th, only to see it get kicked back down to where it closed today in 122 range. It has not seen that range. It has not seen that drop since April, and prior to that had not seen that since February. So we still have some support there from other times in the past. And so I'm going to get a little nerdy with some of the information that I wanted to bring up with earnings just being right around the corner. I really meant to release this video yesterday, but I just didn't get a chance to. I was really busy. So I want to go ahead and cram this one in. In quarter two, Shopify had indicated that they had released Shopify payments in Japan, bringing the total number of Shopify payment countries to 8. So it would be interesting to see how we're doing outside of Canada and outside of the United States, and just to kind of see where we're at in Japan, seeing what kind of strides we got going on from the Shopify payment system, and seeing what other countries we're eyeballing. Another thing that we noticed in Q2 was that there was an increase of transactions being made from mobile phones. I think that's a given. I think more people are going to be making transactions through mobile phones, and we had seen a jump to about 76% in terms of purchases being made on mobile phones. For some reason, I got tongue twisted there. Another thing is that Shopify Capital, if you remember, had launched now a financing program for persons who were interested in getting their businesses up and running. They had saw back then $68.5 million in merchant cash advances in the second quarter, which was an increase of 84% just a year prior in the same quarter. So that looks like that could potentially be a good thing for us because it's just another stream of income. Some have argued that that could be risky because now that could be a liability for businesses who are not able to repay those debts. I could see it both ways. It's just a matter of maybe Shopify being extremely smart about who they're lending to. Other than that, I know that at the beginning of the year, Shopify had also formed a partnership with Nest Cams, which is partnered up with Google Wi-Fi. I would like to see how that's panned out, get an update on that as well. So a couple things. We could go ahead and release a video where I really wanted them to be able to discuss the cannabis side of things. I'm not going to spend too much time on the cannabis. You guys already know how I feel. Shopify has already been involved with cannabis behind the scenes. And let me make this clear because I've heard this argument online with Namaste versus Shopify, that Shopify is in competition with Namaste, or that Namaste is in competition with Shopify. That's not true. So the easiest way that I can explain this to both Shopify and Namaste investors is Shopify is a landlord of the building. Okay? Shopify is the landlord of the building. Namaste rents from the landlord. And Namaste sells all the products. That's how that goes. Clear as crystal? Great. We can move on. So, in that respect, they are not in competition with one another. They do separate things. So, I went online, kind of wanted to see what some of the other speculations, some of the other things that were being said about Shopify in terms of their financial outlook. Let's take a look here. I think back in Q2, Shopify had expected total year revenue to be about $1.015 billion for the year. They had expected that in the third quarter, revenues would range between the $253 million and $257 million range. I would be curious to see if we're able to meet or exceed that. I mean, I'll be honest with you. I've been following Shopify since birth, and Toby is notorious for sandbagging. Sandbagging meaning that they always are ultra conservative about what they think they're going to report, which I think is kind of smart because it's always better to kind of be conservative with the numbers rather than to just be reckless with it and continue missing. They also increased their guidance. We need to not remember that sometimes companies, not only do they report their earnings, but what is their guidance? And so Shopify had increased their guidance. I went online and I did some search on earnings whispers. I'll bring that up here. Let me move to the side here. And as you can see, their earnings whisper here is indicating that they are going to report about a positive 3-cent EPS. And they're also estimating right around the $257 million revenue range. That's kind of what they're indicating. I know earlier reports, I was reading, I think it's another article on Seeking Alpha, who had also indicated right around that same range. I think it was Retire Early, I think, one of the writers from Seeking Alpha, who had indicated probably within the same range of about 253, 257 range. It would be interesting to know what our projected guidance would be for the fourth quarter, especially with what Shopify had done, which I thought was extremely ingenious. If you guys were investors last year, you'll notice and you'll remember that right around Black Friday, they had this live up to the second ticker that kind of was able to track transactions in the moment across the board, depending on what kind of industry, whether it was food, clothing, electrical, makeup, whatever it was. And so I'm really, really hoping that Shopify does that again this season. I think it would be absolutely asinine if they do not discuss cannabis. So my feelings are that the history suggests that we'll probably exceed our guidance and our expectations. We'll probably exceed that. I think our guidance will probably stay in line right now, only because the market's been so shaky. And this is not a Shopify specific issue. Like that drop that I had shown you earlier from 170 to the 130, 170 to the 122 range, it's not a Shopify specific issue, guys. Look at the entire market. Just look across the board. I was going online and about the only thing that was green was some random ass Dow Industrials. Like, who puts their money in that? I mean, so guys, we're all kind of nervous. We're nerve-wracked. It's difficult to trust analysts because they're on camera. All the stock shows that you see on CNBC, some of them are just overly optimistic, I think. But I think there's just too much going on. I've said that in different clips. But for me, what I would love to see is Shopify to actually just knock it out of the ballpark. I think that the stock has been destroyed. I think that it's been bitten too hard. I think that it's obviously sold off. I think a lot of scared investors have decided to sell, take their profits before they meet their maker tomorrow. And that's okay. That happens sometimes. I'm not expecting everyone to stay long. I'm not expecting everybody to weather the earnings release. I think you have some investors that would rather walk away. And that's okay. It's not the end of the world. So hopefully tomorrow morning when we all wake up and we look at the news, we will see that Shopify once again met or exceeded their expectations and has great news about all the businesses that they're involved in, all the countries that they're still expanding to, that the Shopify capital is growing, and that cannabis is going to be a substantial part of our revenue come 2019. So other than that, I want you guys to have a great evening, have a great day. Any comments, questions, please send them to me. As you know, you can find me online on StockTwits as the Intuitive Investor. So please subscribe and you can follow me there. All right, take care.